New York, a city gripped in terror by a monster that's far more and far less than human. During the late 90s, New York City was rocked by a series of extraordinarily brutal murders perpetrated by one man, Cletus, Kasady.
But no one is born evil. Why would this seemingly normal man commit such awful crimes? To answer that, we must look far back into Cletus's past to find the makings of this murderer. Cletus was born to Roscoe and Louise Kasady of Brooklyn, New York. Roscoe Kasady had a reputation as a violent man and is known to bring his violence home with him, a habit that the young Cletus chose to imitate. We spoke to one of the Kasady family's old neighbours who have asked to remain anonymous.
We lived next door to the Kasadys for 4 years, and that kid was always a sicko. Every night we'd hear the same 3 things: their dog yelping, that weirdo kid giggling, and the drill.
Reports recovered from health workers detail consistent bruises on young Cletus, and while familial abuse from one or both parents was suspected, no formal cases were ever made. Though one thing is certain, Cletus did not have a nice family life, so the young boy decided to lighten his burden by getting rid of them. One rainy night in Brooklyn, neighbours were shocked to see an ambulance pull up to the Kasady household. Its emergency lights turned off. They weren't there to help, only to collect a body. With the boy only the age of 8, Cletus's wheelchair-bound grandmother dies when she's pushed down the stairs, and there's no question as to who the killer was. We spoke to NYPD Lieutenant William Lamont about Kasady's first crime.
I was the mug who handled the Kasady case. He admitted to it right away, but he told me it was an accident, that he just pushed too hard too fast. I let him go. I didn't know what I couldn't have known. Maybe if I'd done something I didn't know.
Kasady had tasted first blood, and he had liked it. Over the coming weeks, he would grow to play games, teasing potential victims, including his own mother, with threat of death. Eventually, Cletus's hunger for death would become so unbearable, he would have no choice but to strike again. His second victim? The family dog. Local vet records indicate the boy had taken a drill to the hound, a particularly psychotic method. Kasady's instance of extreme animal abuse was merely the first domino in the series of events that would shape his grim future, as soon after, another body would be added to the pile. Cletus's own mother, Louise Kasady. Though, shockingly, the official report of Lady Kasady's death incriminates not the son, but the father. Roscoe had fatally struck Louise during one of his violent episodes, though bruising on the boy does indicate some involvement on Cletus's part. The confusion surrounding the death of Louise arises from the question of who was the instigator. Was Roscoe attacking his son, forcing Louise to intervene and become a target herself? Or was Louise the one harming Cletus, perhaps in retaliation for the boy's killing of her mother and beloved pet, and Roscoe struck her down before she could hurt their boy? Whether Roscoe Kasady was hero or villain was irrelevant to young Cletus. who gave his father no assistance during his trial. Roscoe was sentenced to death, and Cletus was sentenced to the St. Esther's Orphanage. A troubled child like Cletus was an easy target for the boys at the St. Esther's Home for Boys. His antisocial behaviour invited exclusion, ridicule, and abuse from both the staff and the other children, driving another knife into Kasady's dying humanity. Over the years at this decaying orphanage, Kasady became more and more unhinged as his extreme personality began to take shape. Psychological experts theorized that it was during these formative years that Kasady began to believe that life, all life, was meaningless. He formed his creed that causing random chaos and bloodshed was the ultimate freedom, and decided that in death, he was actually freeing his victims from the futility of life. This chapter in Kasady's life would come to a grisly conclusion as a mysterious fire consumed the orphanage, killing the head administrator and several innocent orphans. Arson was suspected, yet no arrests were made. Now an adult with nowhere to call home, Cletus Kasady was unleashed onto the public. For over a decade, Cletus hunted and butchered with no rhyme or reason, following his philosophy of causing random carnage. In a pattern that would only make sense to a madman, Kasady murdered at least 11 people, until a stroke of bad fortune saw him caught in the act. But the madman would go on to brag about many more corpses, still undiscovered to this day. While the arresting officer could not be interviewed, a colleague told us the story.
Kasady must have been desperate for that kill because he tried to stink victim number 12 in her apartment building's hallway. The rest of the occupants heard her screams and pinned him down long enough for Jean to get him cuffed.
But sadly for New York, this arrest wasn't the end of Cletus's murder spree. It was merely the beginning. The Rikers Island prison facility is an impenetrable fortress on New York City's East River. The facility is mostly used to hold superpowered inmates and has housed public supercriminals such as MacDonald Gargan, Emil Blonsky, and Carl Creel. And thanks to the grotesque nature of his heinous crimes, the newest resident was the non-powered serial killer Cletus Kasady. Locked up with the key thrown away, Cletus would learn what true power could be when he was forced to share a cell with another inhuman being. Edward Brock, also known as Venom, a disgraced newsman who had lost everything through fraudulent reporting. Brock's lies had been exposed by the actions of a local New York vigilante known only as the Spider-Man, and so he had physically and mentally bonded with an unknown alien organism in a mad bid for revenge that had failed. The Spider-Man had successfully separated Brock from his extraterrestrial partner in crime, but that was about to change. We spoke to a local Oscorp bioengineer scientist for an explanation on just what this alien organism could be.
We believe the alien creature to be some manner of symbiotic organism. It bonds with a human, in this case, Edward Brock, and the two individuals benefit one another, forming almost a single entity. Mr. Brock attains otherworldly superpowers, while we assume the alien organism gains some manner of sustenance.
Edward Brock's alien accomplice had survived its skirmish with Spider-Man, and it returned to Brock to continue their campaign of revenge. But in their excitement to escape and murder the vigilante, they failed to notice a small piece of the alien goo left behind in the cell, now occupied by Cletus alone. This genetic runoff, this strange offspring of the alien, was also a symbiote, a being that requires another to survive. And so it latched onto the only living being still present, Cletus Kasady. The wet squirm of alien parasite inflicted itself upon Kasady through a wound on the killer's hand, bonding with the maniac on a cellular level. The symbiote enveloped Cletus fully, granting him all the same powers as the infamous Venom, and more. Using his horrific new abilities, Cletus brutally murdered a prison guard and escaped to continue spreading his worldview of chaos. Cletus Kasady had rebaptized himself in blood as Carnage. This newly formed monstrosity known as Carnage wasted no time in resuming Kasady's mission of murder. Randomly selecting as targets through a phone book, the next victim of Carnage was warehouse manager Gunther Stein, murdered on his own doorstep. And Gunther would be the first of many. A dozen more brutal murders would follow, each more gruesome than the last. Spines torn from bodies, heads spun 360 degrees, limbs rearranged, and at every scene, the culprit had written his name clear as day, in blood. Carnage. At the time, authorities were so appalled at the killing spree they believed it couldn't possibly be the work of a single individual, instead considering this to be the acts of a cult. But the truth was far more sinister. Kasady had been inventing new ways to kill, and, most disturbingly, he was having fun doing it. Shockingly, it wasn't just the police who were after Cletus. We got in contact with one of Kasady's ex-associates, who claims that the vigilante Spider-Man was already on Carnage's trail.
Yeah, that freak whipped me upside down and wanted me to tell him all about Cleats. I told that web freak he could rip my veins out and make me suck on him. No way was I ratting on Kasady. Cletus, if you're watching this, I didn't tell him a damn thing.
How did the public menace Spider-Man know of Kasady's culpability in the murders? Why didn't he go to the proper authorities with the information? We may never know how, but the Spider-Man was successful in tracking Cletus down. It's a fight that police detective Ramon will never forget.
I was just a patrolman, only on my second year on the force. My partner Spooner and I got a call about a disturbance in the St. Esther's ruins, and we walked in to see Spidey about to bite the big one thanks to this monster with living skin. Kasady didn't like us intruding on his kill, and that freaky alien thing shot these blades at me, right out of his fingers. Still got the scars on my chest. He'd have finished us off too, if Spider-Man hadn't have been there.
Police communications managed to secure audio footage from the vigilante Spider-Man's first altercation with Carnage, and we warn that some viewers may find the following recordings distressing.
These symbiotes are everywhere. Where are they coming from?
Where are you going, Spider-Man? Come back here, Spider-Man! Die! Die! Die!
He won't let off. He's right on me. This thing's unstoppable.
It was at this moment we believe Carnage struck Officer Ramon.
Did you get the point, Spider-Man?
You symbiote freak!
This skirmish with Spider-Man did not deter Carnage. Killings continued at random. No one was safe from Kasady's bloodlust. But it would seem that the Spider-Man hadn't given up either. Soon after their first fight, the wall-crawling vigilante was spotted again, battling Carnage. This time in Kasady's own apartment. And he wasn't alone. The outlaw known as Venom seemed to be helping Spider-Man. When we tried to interview Edward Brock, he had this to say.
No media, please. We have issues with reporters.
But people close to Edward Brock claim he is a man of honor. Could it be that Venom felt responsible for the actions of its spawn? Or was it simply displeased with the idea of competition? Either way, the vigilante duo of Spider-Man and Venom seemed no match for Cletus Kasady's raw power. And as always when these super powerful menaces fight, whoever wins, the innocent people of the public lose. This man, Norton Fester, was on the streets below as the battle raged.
We could hear the fight from all the way down on the streets. I saw a frickin' baby fly out the window, for Christ's sake.
This attempted infanticide had been a diversion for Carnage to escape, but he wouldn't keep his low profile for very long, as his next target was to be media mogul J. Jonah Jameson. Mr. Jameson refused to comment on the incident, but ex-Daily Bugle photographer Nicholas Katzenberg revealed the story to us.
We heard a loud bang from the editor's office, and when Mr. Robertson checked it out, he saw that red monster ready to slay JJ, but then it changed its mind and kidnapped him instead. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Later on, Jameson told us Carnage told him he was gonna die because he's the city's beacon of hope, that Jonah represents law and order. All the stuff Kasady hates. The boss calls that day Black Wednesday, not because of the attack, but because it's the day Jonah found out there wasn't just one, not even just two, but there was 3 Spider-Men.
Kasady had abducted Jonah Jameson, but what perverted point was the maniac trying to make? Carnage's rampage may have seemed random, but therein lies the mission statement of this madman. His belief that there is no order to anything. That chaos is the only way of life. Kasady believed himself a prophet, and he believed it was time to spread his doctrine to the masses. Carnage's stage had already been set. Heavy metal band Headbanger Heaven were already playing in New York's popular venue, Madison Square Garden, to a crowd of rebels and societal misfits. A group that Kasady believed would accept his message. But before any more blood could be spilled, the unlikely vigilante team of Spider-Man and Venom caught up to Kasady. The crowd quickly dispersed as these 3 freakish figures prepared for another showdown, one that very well could decide the fate of New York City. Audio recordings abandoned at the scene during the battle have been recovered, though some viewers may find them too disturbing. We will play the audio in 3, 2, 1.
What color do you bleed, Spider-Man? What color do you bleed?
There are 2 things symbiotes hate. It's sonics and fire, and I'm fresh out of both. I guess I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Your symbiote's not gonna save you this time, Cletus.
Spawn substance merging with my other. They're tearing each other apart!
The vigilante battle flowed from the stadium down to the subway and back again, with Carnage seemingly unstoppable. The sheer power of the strange alien bonded to Kasady made the killer almost impossible to stop. One officer on the scene described how Kasady survived a surge of thousands of volts when Spider-Man knocked him onto the 3rd rail, and even this didn't hinder the killer. There has been little research into the field of extraterrestrial symbiosis due to the extreme rarity of cases, but data provided by the Life Foundation laboratories concluded they are susceptible to 2 things: fire and extreme sound. We recovered this audio from the scene as the vigilante managed to set up the abandoned sound system on such a frequency that both of the parasitic symbiotes were incapacitated.
You will pay for that, Spider-Man! The pain! The pain! Stop! Make it stop! Stop! Make it stop!
Cletus Kasady's less experienced alien ally evaporated as the man within the monster fainted from the agony. Symbiosis had ensured that Kasady shared the alien's strength and its weakness. While not much is known about the controversial Spider-Man, heroes appeared at last when Reed Richards and Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four arrived to ensure the proper imprisonment of these sinister symbiotes. God bless you, Fantastic Four! After Kasady's defeat at the hands of the Fantastic Four, justice was swift. Without his otherworldly powers, Carnage was merely Cletus once more, and so was deemed unfit for maximum security super prisons such as the Raft or the Vault. Instead, Cletus Kasady was admitted to the Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane in Westchester County. In the past, this controversial asylum has had little success in rehabilitation, including the infamous cases of Edward Whelan and Francis Barrison. When asked about the general opinion of Ravencroft being not so much a psychiatric hospital, but more of a low-security ward for the criminally insane to plan their next massacres, head Dr. Ashley Kafka refused to comment. Currently, Cletus Kasady remains under 24-hour watch in Ravencroft's highest security wing. Attempts at rehabilitation have so far seemed futile, and Cletus shows no remorse over his actions. But the people of New York can rest assured that Carnage is done, and order has been restored. The rampage of Cletus Carnage Kasady yielded extreme loss of life, extreme property damage, and extreme psychological scarring for all involved. If you or anyone you know were affected by this documentary, please contact the SR Network.